Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Sorry for this delayed start. The computer is still being updated. So what I'll do is I will read out the text from the Quran that I have in front of me. But unfortunately, the text and its translation will not be displayed before you for certain reasons. So just be attentive, please. So this is basically in continuation with yesterday's session in which we were reading verses from Surah Luqman, the 31st Surah of the Quran. We will continue with verses from verse 16 and go up to verse 19. So the text reads like this: Ya bunayya innaha in taku misqala habbatin min khardalin fatakun fi sakhratin aw fis samawati aw fil ard ya'ti biha Allah inna Allaha latifun khabir. Luqman said, "The fact is that if a deed is equal to even the size of the grain of a mustard seed, then whether it is in a small mountain pass or is in the heavens or in the earth, God will retrieve it. Indeed, God is discerning. He is aware of everything." So the first thing which is mentioned here is that the nature and extent of knowledge of the Almighty is such that anything which is done, any deed which is done in the smallest way, it might be hidden from the eyes of people, but one has to rest assured that it will be before the eyes of the Almighty. He knows what people are doing. They might be hiding from Him in the depth of the ocean, they might be anywhere, but God is fully aware of wherever they are. In this regard, the most important thing that we have to appreciate is that doing good is something which comes naturally to us. And at times when we do good, we try for that appreciation from our surroundings, and for this we do display that good before people. And at times this is something which can be a source of inspiration for other people, but at other times this would lead to ostentatiousness or a display of one's own good deeds, and of course it would be tantamount to boasting things that we might be doing. So it is here that the Almighty says that if you do a deed which is absolutely hidden, it will still be in the knowledge of God. And in fact, the real benefit that a deed can reap is through this very notion that you are able to do it while being hidden. And if you do something which is not known to God, this is something that is your own notion, because God has discerning powers. He knows everything. So basically, this is that all embracing uh, wisdom of the Almighty, the all embracing knowledge of the Almighty, which is being depicted. And remember, just to remind ourselves that this is basically Luqman's advice. We are reading his advice in continuation to the previous session, in which he had asked his son, when he was handing over the reins of leadership to him, that he has to be diligent in the prayer, and at the same time he must thank the Almighty, and he must not be in any way unbecoming of the stature that he is now going to adopt. So it goes on, Ya bunayya aqimis salat wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha 'anil munkar wasbir 'ala ma asabaka inna zalika min azmil umur. Son, be diligent in the prayer, urge what is good and forbid evil, and whatever mishap strikes you in this path, be steadfast on it. It is because these are the tasks which have been emphasized. So clearly, you can see that in our previous session also, as his advice had started off by saying that the wisdom that he taught to his son was to thank the Almighty. And then once this was done, he started off by telling his son that you must acknowledge one God. And remember, these idolaters of Mecca, they had become incriminated with certain heinous forms of polytheism. And they are being reminded that some person that they revered, they really looked up to, who was Luqman, he never ever preached polytheism. He was a monotheist, and at the time of handing over the reins of leadership to his son, he actually preached him that don't forget this creed of monotheism. So these idolaters of Mecca are being constantly reminded that they have distorted their religion. They inherited a religion which was based on monotheism, and it was they who had distorted it and now become proponents of polytheism. So now, in this scenario, the first thing which is mentioned once again is so close to what people can think of, that as much as we can, that in the matter of our beliefs, the foundational belief that we can have is that of Tawheed or monotheism. And we just saw yesterday, in yesterday's session, how this belief was propounded by Luqman. And then it has said here, as he continues with his advice, Ya bunayya aqim as-salat. Oh, my son. Ya bunayya is a very, very fond expression uh, for one's son. It's like a loving expression that a father can have for his son. And that is why the words have a very, very special ring to it. And they say, Ya bunayya aqim as-salat. Oh, son of mine, oh, dear son of mine, be diligent in the prayer. So you can see that how Luqman in his own times was actually advising his son, counseling his son that he must be diligent in the prayer. And what does that mean? Of course, diligence in the prayer is something that we have discussed earlier on as well. It means that you have to be punctual in the prayer. It means that you must be persistent in your prayer. It means that you must know what you are reading in the prayer so that it becomes part of you. You are able to have a living relationship with the Almighty. So when Luqman was advising his son to be diligent in the prayer, he had all these things encompassed in that single word, Aqim as-salat. And we all know, dear viewers, that Salah and Zakat, these are the two rituals, worship rituals, which are mentioned adjacent in the Quran for several hundred times. And each time that they are mentioned, we know that the way they are mentioned, when Salah is mentioned, it is something which links a person to the Almighty. And when Zakat is mentioned, it links a person to his fellow brethren. And that is why we call this to be a vertical horizontal relationship. So vertically, we get connected to God through the prayer, and horizontally we get connected to our brethren through zakat and by being sympathetic to them. But most importantly, we have to understand that as far as salat is concerned, this is the most vibrant connection that we can have. And in the month of Ramadan that we are now passing through, we have almost gone through one third of that month by now, or very near to that. So one thing that can be really very beneficial in this month of Ramadan, in view of what Luqman has just said, is that we have to be very, very punctual in our prayer. The more we can, the best it is for us. And especially if we are able to make arrangements and show diligence in the night prayer, which is the tahajjud prayer. If we are able to offer that prayer just before our sehri, or the suhoor that we take, the night meals that we take to start off our fast, if we are able to get up sometime before that and offer that night prayer, then this is something which can really bring us very close to God, because we know from the Quran that this is a time which is very, very blessed, and the Almighty has said in some narratives reported by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that this is the time in which the Almighty is fully focused on the petitions and the requests and the supplications of his servants, and he would like to honor them, he would like to respond to them. So it's a very blessed time. And in the wake of this blessed month, let us try to be more diligent in offering this prayer. The next thing which is mentioned is Wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha anil munkar. So Luqman is telling his son that you must enjoin what is good and you must forbid what is evil. Amar bil ma'ruf and nahi munkar is something we know very commonly. So it is no different from what Luqman had said to his son in those times. And again, the word ma'ruf and munkar should not confuse people. It does not relate to religious right or religious wrong. It relates to universal right and universal wrong. So whatever is acknowledged by the whole of humanity as a positive thing, as a good thing, is called ma'ruf. And whatever is acknowledged to be a negative thing or a bad trait is munkar. For example, justice, truth, kindness, they will be ma'ruf. And telling a lie, showing dishonesty, or threatening people and doing evil things to people, so this would be munkar. So anything which is universally regarded to be an evil is a munkar, and whatever is universally regarded to be good is actually maruf. And this is again what has been told to his son by Luqman, that remember, we are just not people who believe in good things. We also like to advise people. We also like to spread that goodness among other people and try to also make them realize that if they are doing some bad things, then they should try to abstain from them. So the concern that we should have regarding people is reflected in this duty, that we are trying to share this goodness with other people. We are trying to perpetuate righteousness amongst other people, and we are trying to make them realize that if they are doing something wrong, they are not going to harm God in any way, they are not going to harm other people in any way. The biggest harm that can come is to their own selves. So wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha anil munkar. And then it is said wasbir ala ma asabak, which means that whenever some mishap strikes you, be steadfast on it. So in this cause of spreading righteousness, in the cause of stopping people from evil, of course there would be certain reversals, you might face mishaps, and God says that at this instance you have to show patience. So wasbir alama asabak, whatever calamity strikes you in this way of righteousness, be steadfast, stare that calamity in the eye. We have discussed this a number of times, that the word sabr, as used in the Arabic language, does not reflect any weakness in it. It actually has the air of being steadfast, of showing that resolve and resilience to rise up to the challenge, to come to grips with the challenge, to stare it in the eye and try to defeat it. So, wasbir alama asabaka would typically mean that you face that challenge with grit, with resolve, and don't let yourself be bogged down from that challenge. Because when you are going to spread righteousness, the fire of righteousness, the light of righteousness, just as it is going to enkindle hearts, it is also going to cause alarm in the minds of many people, and they are going to cause a lot of hindrances, and they are bound to create barriers, and they are bound to harm you. But then it is here that you have to bear this suffering with a smile, with tolerance, so that you are able to further the cause of righteousness. And one of the most important things which is mentioned now and near the end, it is said, وَلَا تُسَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. And be not indifferent to people. Be not indifferent to people, and walk not arrogantly on the land, because God does not like the arrogant and the conceited. So, to be a person who is arrogant, a person who treats people indifferently, is a person who thinks of himself, who's full of himself, and this is something which the Almighty does not like at all. We have to be people who are humble. We should be people who are down to earth. We should be people who are always looking after other people, at the same time realizing our own mistakes and not always pointing out the mistakes of other people, because this is something which is very unbecoming. So la tusa'ir khaddaka linnas, that do not be indifferent to people. People, they need your care, they need your affection, they need your sympathy, they need your kindness. And if you are in a position to be kind to them and still you show that conceit and arrogance of turning yourself away from them, then it does mean that you think that you are superior to other people, and this is something which is disliked by God. And similarly, it is then said, La tamshi fil ardi maraha, that do not walk arrogantly on earth, which means that the gait that you follow, the way that you are going to walk on, should not reflect that arrogance. And this is something which is going to reflect on your inner self as well. If you outwardly you have that air of arrogance, it is bound to infiltrate on your inner person as well. Finally, it is said, "Waqsid fi mashika waghzuz min sautika inna ankara al aswati la sautul hamir." Be moderate in your gait and keep your voice toned down. In reality, the most hideous of voices is the braying of the donkey. So, not only you have to be very, very careful the way we walk and the way we conduct ourselves, the Quran also says that our voice also should not reflect that arrogance. Our voice should be polite. Our voice should be something which welcomes people, which is music to the ears, which is something which causes that inspiration in the life and minds of other people. And then this example is given that the hideous of voices is the braying of the donkey, which means that if you are going to speak in these terms, then just as you would abhor, or you do abhor, the voice of a donkey, this is how people would think about you as well. So be polite, be kind, and be nice. So, with these words, we come to an end to today's session, and we now turn to question and answers.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for the explanation. Our first question comes from Baran. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Yeah, so my question was, when we are walking like just normal on the street,
Mm-hmm.
and we are not trying to walk arrogantly, but we see like someone of low status, and maybe there's like west from shaitan in our heads, like, is this a
Mm-hmm.
person from low status or score? Is that a sign from ourselves, or is it west from shaitan, and should we just ignore it?
I think it could be both. It could be either, but that doesn't matter. I mean, this whispering from Satan and the whispering from the soul, both these things, they are sources of evil. So remember, things that induce us or lure us towards bad things, there are two sources. One is Satan, of course, who whispers in your heart, and the other is our own soul. So our soul also is prone to evil. So it could be from either of the two sources, and it is a material if you try to discuss the source, because it could be either of the two. So the real thing is to how to curb this and how to overcome this, and that is to shrug yourself, and as soon as you get this feeling, just look the other way. And whenever you feel that element of conceit, one of the most beautiful things which people have suggested in this regard is that immediately turn to your own follies and your own flaws and your own mistakes. When you are full of yourself, when you think that you are superior, you don't look towards some of the faults that you might be having. So, in order to just let go of this feeling of superiority, immediately focus on the mistakes and the shortcomings that we have, and this will cut us to size.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Shabnam, you're next. Please unmute your mic and ask your question.
सर आपने ये मेंशन किया था कि हजरत लुकमान गालिबन ही वाज चीफ ऑफ हिज ट्राइब और पीपल, और वही स्टेटस पास ऑन कर रहे थे अपने बेटे को. तो सर हाउ डू वी नो कि ऐसा था, क्योंकि कुरान में तो ऐसा मेंशन नहीं है. और दूसरा पार्ट इसी क्वेश्चन का ये है कि इस्लाम में ये इस तरह की जो हार्डशिप है वो इतनी एनकरेज नहीं है. तो फिर अल्लाह ताला मेंशन भी कर रहे हैं कि वो ही वाज पासिंग इट ऑन टू हिज सन. तो सर काइंडली ये थोड़ा सा क्लियर कर
आई एम सॉरी, आपका सेकंड हिस्सा मुझे समझ में नहीं आया कि क्या चीज.
सर वो मतलब वो ये अपना स्टेटस जो उनका चीफ ऑफ ट्राइब का था, वो अपने बेटे को मतलब लाइक अपने नस्ल में उसको उसको अपना बना रहे थे ना खलीफा, मतलब नेक्स्ट किंग वो था चीफ ऑफ ट्राइब. तो इस तरह वो तो
नहीं, वो देखें, ये इसको आप अरबों की ज़हनियत और अरबों के कल्चर में हम समझें. वहाँ पे जो ट्राइबल एल्डर्स होते थे वो ऐसे ही होता था. वहाँ पे डायनेस्टीज होती थी और ट्राइब रूल करती थी. वो कोई उस तरह के मुसलमान अहकाम के पाबंद नहीं थे कि आपने शूरा पे चलना है या मेरिट पे तकसीम करना है. वहाँ पे तो रूल यही था कि जो चीफ होता था वो अपने बेटे को या अपने पोते को, जैसे कि डायनेस्टीज में होता है. तो इस वजह से उस चीज़ को तो आप नज़रअंदाज कर देना, क्योंकि वो तो एक बिल्कुल और जेनरिक डायनामिक वहाँ पे वो फॉलो कर रहे थे. जो असल चीज़ कुरान ने जिस वजह से इसको कोट किया है वो दूसरी है. वो ये है कि लुकमान, जिसको वो लुक अप करते थे, लुकमान हकीम कहते थे, लुकमान द वाइज. सो उनको वो बहुत बड़ा दर्जा देते थे. अरबी शायरी उनकी जो प्रेज से भरी हुई है. तो असल में हवाला इस वजह से दिया जा रहा है कि लुकमान भी तौहीद परस्त थे. वो भी जिसको आप अरब बहुत बड़ा समझते हैं, उन्होंने भी कभी शिरक नहीं किया, और उन्होंने भी वही पैगाम उन्होंने दिया जो नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम अब उनके पास लेके आए हैं, अरबों के पास. तो असल जो इस्तदलाल है उस कंटेंट से है.
राइट सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Minahil Ashraf, you're next. Please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, as mentioned in the last ayahs of Surah Luqman that we discussed, the hideous of verses is the braying of the donkey. So I wanted to ask that maybe it is a myth or is it real that a donkey speaks loudly when it sees the shaitan or the devil. So is it right or not?
That we cannot say, be sure of, unless you are referring to some narrative of the Prophet. If that is what you're referring to, then I would need to check that out. Otherwise, the braying of the donkey, I don't think it should be linked to anything like that, because that's an entirely different world that we have no access to. I mean, people or animals or different species, when they make a noise, it could be for a number of reasons, and we cannot be privy to that noise because we don't know the language.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Mansoor Ahmed, you are next. Please ask your question.
السلام علیکم.
وعلیکم السلام.
سر بائبل میں ملتا ہے کہ آئی ایم اے جیلس گاڈ، جس کو ہمارے کچھ اسکالرس انڈورس بھی کرتے ہیں. تو کیا خدا کے لیے جیلسی کو خاص کرنا ٹھیک ہے؟
نہیں، یہ اصل میں ترجمے کی غلطی ہے. ترجمے کی غلطی ہے. بعض آپ بائبل کے حصے دیکھیں گے تو اس میں انگریزی میں مثلاً آنریبل کا جو لفظ جو ہے اس کا صحیح ترجمہ ہے, اور یہ جیلسی کا جو ورڈ ہے یہ اردو کی یا انگریزی کی بائبل میں آ گیا ہوا ہے. اصل جو چیز وہاں مراد ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ اللہ تعالیٰ اپنا کوئی شریک برداشت نہیں کرتے یا ان کا کوئی شریک نہیں ہے. یہ اصل میں شرک کا مضمون ہے جس کو مترجمین نے جیلسی سے ادا کر دیا کہ جیسے وہ اپنے کسی ساتھی کے بارے میں وہ حسد میں مبتلا ہیں کہ ان کا کوئی ساتھی کیوں ہے. تو یہ جو یور گاڈ از اے جیلس گاڈ انگریزی میں بھی بعض بائبل میں ترجمہ ہوا ہے, تو یہاں اصل میں اس کا صحیح ترجمہ ہونا چاہیے آنریبل کا, کہ وہ خدا جو ہے وہ وحدہ لا شریک ہے, اور جو وحدہ لا شریک ہے جب آپ اس کے ساتھ کسی کو شریک کرتے ہیں تو یہ چیز اس کو ناپسند ہے. تو یہ بنیادی طور پہ اللہ تعالیٰ کی جو توحید ہے اس کا بیان ہے, لیکن ترجمے میں اس کو اس طرح سے ادا کر دیا گیا ہے کہ جیسے وہ اپنے کسی ایسوسیٹ سے حسد کرتا ہو.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. There's a question in the chat which is, was Luqman from Bani Ishaq?
I am not sure about that. We need to look that up. Maybe you can Google some history about him and find it out. But to the best of my knowledge, actually, he was from the Ishmaelites because he was he lived amongst the Arabs. But maybe you can do some more research and find out.
Thank you. Faiz, unmute your mic and ask your question. You're next.
السلام علیکم سر.
وعلیکم السلام.
سر جی سورہ نمبر ورس نمبر 18 میں سورہ لقمان کہتی ہے گاڈ ڈز ناٹ لائک دا ایروگینٹ اینڈ دا کنسیٹڈ. تو سر جی یہ کنسیٹڈ کون سے لوگ ہیں جن کو قرآن ریفر کر رہا ہے, کون سے ٹائپ کے لوگ ہیں یہ؟
ایروگنس اور کنسیٹ وہی ہے جو تکبر جس کو آپ کہتے ہیں. تکبر جس کے اندر ہو, جو اپنے آپ کو بڑا سمجھے دوسروں سے, جس کو دوسرے جو ہیں جس کو دوسرے اپنے آپ کو حقیر سمجھے کہ باقی لوگ اور میں سب سے بڑا ہوں, انہی کو لوگوں کہتے ہیں کہ یہ کنسیٹڈ ہے یا ایروگنٹ ہے. یہ متکبر کا ترجمہ ہے.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Muhammad Shadab, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
السلام علیکم سر.
وعلیکم السلام.
سر میرے دو سوال ہیں. ایک تو یہ کہ حکیم لقمان صاحب جو تھے یہ اللہ کے نبی تھے کیا, اور دوسرا یہ کہ جو قرآن کا ترجمہ ہوتا ہے اس میں جو سجدے کی آیت ہوتی ہے اس کے آگے سجدہ کا سائن نہیں رہتا, تو یہ سجدہ کرنا لازمی ہے کیا, اگر نہیں کرنے پہ گناہ ہے کیا؟
پہلی بات تو یہ کہ لقمان نبی نہیں تھے, اور جس طرح سے ان کا ذکر قرآن مجید میں آیا ہے, اگر وہ نبی ہوتے تو ان کے نبوت کے اظہار کے طریقے پہ آتا. ایسا تو نہیں ہے, ان کو تو ایک سادہ ایک چیف کے طور پہ, ایک لیڈر کے طور پہ, ایک ٹرائبل ایلڈر کے طور پہ پورٹرے کیا گیا ہے, اس لیے یہ تو ان لائکلی ہے کہ وہ نبی ہوں. اور دوسرا سوال آپ کا کیا تھا؟
سر وہ جو قرآن کا ترجمہ رہتا ہے اس میں سجدے کی آیت کے آگے سائن نہیں رہتا.
جو سجدے کی جو آیت ہے یہ تو اصل میں نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا نا رسپانس تھا قرآن پڑھنے میں. آپ جب سجدے کی آیات پڑھتے تو آپ خود سجدے میں گر جاتے. تو یہ اصل میں ایک ادب کی چیز ہے, ایک اسپونٹینیس اظہار ہے, کیونکہ وہ جیسے آپ آیت پڑھتے ہیں نا, آیت میں اگر یہ ہو کہ آپ دعا کریں تو آپ دعا کر لیا کرتے تھے, آیت اگر یہ کہتی تھی کہ استغفار کریں تو آپ استغفار کیا کرتے. تو یہ ایک زندہ تعلق کی علامت تھی نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی. تو ویسے ہی جب آیتوں کے اندر سجدے کا ذکر آتا تھا کہ زمین اور آسمان سجدہ کر رہے ہیں تو آپ بھی بے اختیار سجدے میں گر جاتے تھے. تو یہ نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا قرآن سے تعلق کا اظہار ہے. اب ہم اگر اس اظہار کو محسوس کریں تو ہمیں بھی کر لینا چاہیے, لیکن یہ فرض واجب کی چیز نہیں ہے. یہ تو اصل میں قرآن سے جب آپ کا تعلق پیدا ہوتا ہے تو اس قرآن جو کچھ آپ کو کہہ رہا ہوتا ہے تو اسپونٹینیسلی آپ کا دل چاہتا ہے کہ آپ وہ کریں. تو نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے وہ کیا, آپ کو بھی وہ محسوس ہو تو آپ ضرور کریں, لیکن یہ کوئی فرض واجب کی چیز نہیں ہے.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. There's a question I got in the chat. We go for Taraweeh in the masjid and here they do 8 rakat and they say the witr preceded by 2 nafil shifatul witr. So we follow the imam, but then I wake up for tahajjud and I say 4 nafil, but then Dr. Shehzad had said the other day that tahajjud prayer should be odd. So how does this imply when we say our witr after Taraweeh?
So the best thing is that you just leave those witrs at night and with the Isha prayer, and so that when you get up in the morning you can actually offer them at the right time. So just don't offer the witr prayer with the Isha, just leave it for the tahajjud time.
Thank you. Mansoor Ahmed, you can ask your question.
سر سورہ دعا کے کانٹیکس میں بتایا جاتا ہے کہ رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے لیے وحی کا سلسلہ رک گیا تھا. تو یہ جو سلسلہ رکا تھا اس کا ٹائم پیریڈ کیا تھا؟ ہمیں یعنی اس میں بہت اختلاف ملتا ہے کہ وہ ایک لمبا عرصہ تھا.
The best way is that you please pick up a tafsir of the Quran and you'll find out it does not seem the way narratives have described as if the Almighty had become angry with the Prophet, as the verses themselves say, "Ma wadda'aka rabbuka wa ma qala." Basically, of course, it was a certain gap that had occurred, and the reason was that, of course, revelation was sent by the Almighty as and when needed. So when it was not needed, it was no longer sent. So it was something that made the Prophet depressed for some time, that he was not receiving that revelation, and at that he has been sounded that assurance that your God is not angry with you, or he's not left you. It's just a question of the fact that we are going to send revelation whenever they are needed. So, but the time, of course, is something which we cannot determine.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. There's a question in the chat. If we commit kabira guna on a very small level, will it be forgiven by focused astaghfar, or talafi is also required?
Well, it depends on the nature of the sin. If the sin is
Well, like a
something that
gesture of
needs,
arrogance.
I think that gesture of arrogance, if it is done against someone, or you have actually harassed someone, or you've shown that arrogance towards someone, that you need to apologize to that person as well. But if it is done just, I mean, something that you have expressed to your own self, then you don't need to, of course, apologize. So apology is needed. Amendments are needed whenever you do something against someone. Otherwise, repentance is just enough.
Thank you. Another question is that how do we know if something is the wisdom of God, or if it is a decision we made wrong as a test, as a circumstance?
We can never know that, because for that we need to have a connection with God. It's just basically a thought that comes to us at times when we do something wrong, and we are chastened by that. So it is a feeling which comes to every believer, that maybe I had done something wrong and I have been punished by the Almighty. But then it's not something that you can be absolutely sure of. It could be some other reason as well. So the bottom line here is that whenever you face these adverse circumstances, we must all indulge in soul searching, and it is an opportunity to look back in our lives, that maybe we were doing something wrong, and maybe we are being chastened by the Almighty. So it's just a maybe that is there, but that maybe should be enough to propel us to review our lives.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Noreen, you may ask your question now.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि समटाइम्स हम रिलेशनशिप में बहुत ज़्यादा रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज ले रहे होते हैं और लेते ही रहते हैं, तो उसमें हम नतीजे को नहीं बर्दाश्त कर पाते ना, अगर हम वो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ना लें, तो हमें कैसा रवैया होना चाहिए? मतलब हम लेते ही रहें सारी जिंदगी?
कोई मिसाल दीजिए।
एग्जाम्पल जैसे कुछ चीजें ऐसी होती हैं, फॉर एग्जाम्पल जब फीमेल्स जो हैं वो कंट्रीब्यूट कर रही होती हैं अपनी जॉब रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज को फैमिली में, तो सर उसमें हमें कैसा, मतलब कितनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज हम ले सकते हैं?
देखें, इसका ताल्लुक तो आपके अपने हस्बैंड के साथ अंडरस्टैंडिंग से है। असल में तो जिम्मेदारियां आपके हस्बैंड की हैं कि वो सपोर्ट करें फैमिली को, लेकिन अगर फाइनेंशियली आप कोई उनकी हेल्प कर रही हैं या उनको असिस्ट कर रही हैं, तो ये आपकी अच्छाई है या आपकी बड़ाई है। वरना जिम्मेदारी तो फाइनेंशियली तमाम इस तरह के सेटअप्स में हस्बैंड्स की होती है। अगर वो अपनी जिम्मेदारी किसी मजबूरी से पूरी नहीं कर रहे, तो एक अलग बात है।
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Shehzad.
Thank you, sir.
There's a last question we're going to take. It's in the chat. Is Islamic banking halal? Is it all right to take interest?
I mean, I didn't get that. Is it right to take interest, and then at the same time, is Islamic banking halal? Are there two different questions?
I think they're asking about the interest. I think they're asking about the difference between the two banking styles, and is taking interest on the...
I mean, taking interest should be avoided at all cost, of course. But Islamic banking, yes. I mean, if you are satisfied reasonably with their working, then you can benefit from it. It all stems from the mechanism that an Islamic bank is using. At times, it's not very different from the conventional banking mechanism, and at times it has some more nuances. So it depends on which Islamic bank you are using and how deep you are going.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. This is all for today, and thank you all the participants. For today's session, we're concluding over here, and thank you so much. Allah Hafiz. See you tomorrow.
Allah Hafiz.